Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Insight into Wellness. This is part 2 with Dr. Kimberly Karuna. And today's topic, just like the last, we are talking about libido liberation, more on a focus of hormonal health post motherhood. Dr. Kimberly Karuna is a licensed naturopathic doctor, transformational coach, reconnective healing practitioner, and certified holistic pelvic care specialist. She serves as a medical detective, intuitive guide, and transformational coach, helping others identify the underlying root causes behind their health complaints and guiding them on a journey back to wholeness by reestablishing coherence between their mind, body, and soul. Thank you so much again for joining me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yay. Me
Yes.
too.
Yeah. Um, so let's just jump in. We kind of post this recording talked about really getting into helping women after birth, hormonally, emotionally. Um, Tell us more about how you work in this sector with women.
Yeah, specifically post becoming a mother. Is that what you mean?
Well, we are talking more hormones. We are talking
Mhm.
after birth and the relationship between women and themselves, and also the support that they need. How do you help women through situations like this?
Yeah, thank you. So, as a mother of two myself, I am so aware of how, and a practitioner, I'm very well aware of how common postpartum depression is.
Mm,
And I think that most people think it has to look with a certain way, just like hypothyroidism has to have a certain check before you can be diagnosed with it.
mm-hmm,
And so many women need support in huge ways at all levels when they become a mom, because essentially there's like a part of them that has officially died, right? Like the part of them that is hasn't birthed a child, their hormones haven't taken a swing, their cervix hasn't opened up to, an ungodly amount of centimeters to push a baby out. And there's so many demands on the body nutritionally, during pregnancy, post pregnancy, as well as if that mother is able to, nurse the child and chooses to do that, there's even a greater demand. And sometimes that nutritional demand can go, many, many years.
mm-hmm,
So it's our natural instinct as women to nurture and to give and to give with almost a sense of panic sometimes to, a growing babe. And so it's very common in my practice to see a lot of women, come in with a complete lack of, resources on how can I support myself. I'm feeling so utterly exhausted. I'm feeling so utterly depleted. And then maybe needing a little bit of not only perspective on how they're orienting and how they're managing their day to day, but how they're living their lives. How are they taking care of their bodies? How are they prioritizing self-care for the long run, for the sustainability of it? Because if they're not doing that, someone can come out and ride the hormones for a while, right? Like the baby bliss high. But the reality is over time, we can only our bodies can only compensate for a period of time before we start to feel symptoms. And, at that point, it's not uncommon for a woman to have lost herself, you know, the identities around who I am, what I'm here to do, and all of our not enough stories and everything else that came up with our own parenting shows up. So there's so much there. And so it kind of depends on what a woman is, complaining about, or what her struggles are. And, is she nourishing herself? And that means, again, nutritionally, is she receiving support? A lot of women, especially modern women, and I struggled with this a lot myself, of like, how much do I have to do? And, what are we proving? And especially, conscious parenting, we elevate the bar on all these expectations that may or may not be realistic. So,
yeah. What is so you mentioned like women coming sometimes with panic. What's happening to our hormones when we have that highly elevated panic, when maybe we're doing everything, like, a mom is doing everything that she can, but there's this elevated sense of like panic, wrongness. I don't know if I'm
right.
using all of the words, but what's happening in the body when that is happening? There's that struggle.
Yeah, well, I can speak to just sort of maybe the opposite first. I think a woman who doesn't experience that
Hmm.
has a certain level of groundedness and conviction and certainty in not only who she is, but what her capacity is. And that can be just sort of a level of what we'll call confidence. But I
Hmm.
think it's deeper than that, right? It's like, I know I can handle what it means to be a mother, and I have realistic expectations of what it means to be the mother I want to be. And it's not compounded and um, colluded with a bunch of sort of our own trauma history, depending on how well we were nurtured by our parents.
Hmm.
So I think when we don't experience some spectrum of that, panic, anxiety, or depression, there is a level of, I got this, that is at a deep level of the soul, right? And so maybe that not enough story has been kind of flushed out, or maybe it just really didn't ever have a big seduction on that woman. But if someone like the most of us that will come in, because it's a big ride, it's a radical overhaul. If you're not, if you're having a baby in a family structure, your family structure just changed from 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Like it's radically different, and the demands are unforeseen. So it's so classic, for example, when if a person tries to explain, I can't even take a bath, or I can't even get in the shower, and other people are like, what do you mean you can't just take a shower? And so trying to explain what that's like to someone who's not in that seat is almost pointless sometimes, right? And so I think in terms of how to address that and like why that is, it can certainly be hormonal. It can certainly be sleep. I mean, it's very classic that for many reasons, a woman's nervous system is so finely tuned because we're primed at possible threat for our loved one,
Little
right?
baby.
We are 100% responsible. And depending on how good we feel about being responsible for someone else's well being,
So important.
and our own codependent patterns potentially, that can be an elevated level of stress. And so if a woman's not sleeping, she's not eating nutritionally, and her blood sugar is kind of getting wonky, she's scared whether her menses are coming back because it's been 8 months, right? There's so many reasons for why like something's wrong can come up.
Hmm.
And the moment, over the strain on someone's nervous system can be almost like hair trigger like, right? So it doesn't take much to kind of cross into that threshold where something's going to happen, I'm not going to do it, and that's something terrible. When we're in that state of mind, our brain is primed to go to catastrophic thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so when our nervous system gets wired into a sympathetic hypervigilant overdrive, hormonal imbalances are just a natural fallout, right? Like
Yeah.
you will get estrogen dominance, you'll get mood swings, you'll get heavier periods when you do start, maybe some weight gain. And so then here's another thing that comes up, like, I'm not even myself anymore, and now my body doesn't look the same, my body doesn't feel the same.
Hmm.
The way I related with my partner sexually and like changes for so many reasons, but that's again hormonal or more
Yeah.
psychological.
Do you think it's a both and or an either or? Will hormones go out of whack and then we respond to them? Or does our energy, our intensity, cause hormones to go out of whack? Is it
Oh,
a
love
both
that.
and? Yeah.
I love that question, right? Because it speaks to the dynamism that we are seeing. And it absolutely, from my perspective, is an and, right?
Hmm.
So we can have, um, like, we'll call it just like a pool or wave pool, right? And things be relatively here. And the moment we start like projecting a story that is going to produce a lot of anxiety, for us, like we question our capability, and if that we can effectively do something, the fallout has a big impact. That's going to create a lot of fear, right? That alone, because our subconscious mind does not know the difference between what's happening versus what we imagine happening, which is
Hmm.
amazing, right? Because there's the power of the leverage
Yeah.
of our psychology and guiding our health, our life experience, our happiness, all that. But if that doesn't get acknowledged and checked, it's like reptilian brain right on board, right? And
Hmm.
this is where sometimes it's like, I don't even know what happened. A panic attack just like, boom, happened quickly, and it has to be physiologic, right? But subconscious thoughts are subconscious, and they happen like rapid fire, and we're not always aware of them because they're subconscious. So I think having that can absolutely change our physiology and create the panic. Now, there's other things that, for example, as moms, sometimes you take all this energy to feed your kid, depending on if it's like a toddler, a newborn, or even 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Like you can be so busy and there's so much energy on that and energy on getting your kids that it can be an easy sequelae to forget about yourself, that you've eaten or that you haven't had your needs met. And so
I
all of a
see
sudden
that all the time.
right, you're operating, and all of a sudden it's like you will naturally, your body will be freaking out. Are we okay? Are we okay? Because of the blood sugar issues, for example. And that will generate physiological responses of anxiety, which can compound the psychological ones.
And then put that on repeat, and then just see that compounding until it becomes a really evident in the physiology rather than just some anxiety, but then it can actually come out in more of a physical form as well.
Yeah. So I never separate the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that they always do a dance together. And it's
Mm.
sometimes, is it important to recognize like which one came first? I think it's more important for long-term resolution rather than management to address both parts. Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about the responsibility to, being a mom.
Mhm.
And I think part of that responsibility comes, which we kind of talked about the last time, like these outside stories, these outside forces. So this parent comparison, like things that we think we should be doing for ourselves versus what we need to be doing for ourselves. When you're healing, when you're working with clients, how do you guide them down a path where they're paying attention to themselves and what they need?
Mm,
And where do you start
love that
like
question.
healing people and helping like that?
Yeah, ultimately, I think what you're speaking to is how well does a woman hold her own sovereignty? And like,
Mm,
where does she hold her power? Does she give it away? Does she know her own authority? So as we become a mom, naturally, there's an instinctual, like, can I do this? Because it's intense, right? And it's something we've never done before. And we have to kind of really anchor to a place of trust, not only in the birthing process but in the mothering process. And so I think that if a woman is prone to questioning and used to validating her own experience or her own capabilities from external impressions or outside of herself, then the mom comparison is high. And unfortunately, I think I can speak for certainly myself, but for almost every mom I know, mom shaming is a real deal,
yeah.
and it's sad because it's hard enough as it is. Everybody's always doing their best, and every baby has different temperaments and different timelines. And, you were able to breastfeed your child for this long. Oh, you had to have a C-section. And like the natural pointing fingers around what is right or wrong can come, not what I believe is naturally from like that place of their own feelings of insufficiency and like, well, I'm not the only one doing it wrong, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and kind of this discomfort around that. So a lot of moms can feel really alone in the process if they're not in their circle of other moms that they might meet, having the same experience, meeting the mark according to their own barometer or someone else's barometer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How when this comparison starts happening, how do you break that loop? Because I know when I'm working with people and we're like constantly working through a loop, stepping out of story, reevaluating values, looking into what it is that you truly want and need. How do you have people step out of that loop and take a new path, take their own path?
Yeah. The very first step, what I would call like the map to behavioral change, is recognition. So a lot of people don't want to um, admit with honesty where they're really at
Mm,
because there's a lot of shame there.
huge.
And I always say it's like, if we know we want to get somewhere, we'll call it a health destination, whether that's a mental health destination, a physical destination, like some sort of destination. In order to really be able to get there and not have it be this long circuitous route that's torturous, like we have to know why we want to get there, what the value is, and where our starting point is, like where our authentic
Mm-hmm.
starting point is.
Yes.
So a lot of women will be like, everything's fine. I got this. That's how they were modeled by their mom, or that's what they're modeled in their community. It brings up too much stuff to feel like, actually, I'm freaking out. I can't even manage this. And I'm hating parenting, or whatever it is that's real for them.
Mm-hmm.
If they're locking that in, they're going to feed their loneliness. They're going to feed
Mm-hmm.
their worthlessness. They're going to feed all of those deeper stories that's going to keep them isolated and, really screw up their hormones clearly. But, I think that again, it goes back to how do they know what's true? And so your question, like, how do you lead someone out of there and how do you like break the loop and the pattern? I work very much pattern wise, both just strictly naturopathically, but also when I'm doing soul medicine coaching. It's like, well, what is the belief that's integrated into your body, but it's also become habitual. It's become habitual in the way we sit. When we're living in a story, we will posture a certain way, we will speak a certain way, and it's all coming from whatever belief and interpretation we have, right? And you know this, like, we will naturally, from whatever we're believing, scan our experience to like validate that one thing that we don't even want to be true. So it's sort of, sometimes it's, if I'm sensing that a woman is really, we'll say, stuck in overwhelm and pity. Love that one myself. It can be a really horrific trap and it feels horrible, right? But to really let someone get honest and sit there, let them take up as much space, because it's never really about that. So then they'll get uncomfortable with it and have these ahas of like, oh, that's what my anxiety is really about. Or like, oh, because it's really about always masking something else, right? Like, so it's sort of helping them get clear, where is their real home base? What's the impact of living there? Like, how do we take accountability to why you stay there? Because, if we don't understand our own participation and our experience, we will always be stuck.
Yeah.
Because we will constantly feed it, right?
You said something that was so big. It was just the idea of asking for help, or you said being alone. And so the other opposite end of that is reaching out and asking for help. I am really getting into studying about relationships and community, and that can be so hard, reaching out, asking for help. Some people just can't get to that step.
Oh, I think working the receiving muscle completely transformed my life and my health.
I love that, the receiving muscle. I love that.
Yeah, because it's like when we allow ourselves to really receive support, especially like as a postpartum mom, and thank God there's things like, meal trains and things like that we have in the modern world to support moms, because we recognize the need, and it's not like, who are you to deserve that, right? We sort of have a natural inclination to support each other more.
Yep.
But just because we have a natural inclination to do that, some people who do that excessively or want to do it with such ease are the people who have the hardest time receiving it themselves.
Yep.
Right? And so when we actually learn to, oh, thank you, I will receive that, we are actually claiming our worthiness at a deeper level. And it's totally freeing, right? It's like, oh, I am lovable. I do deserve this. I have already done all this. And I don't need to deserve this because I've done X, Y, Z, right? It's not a bartering thing. So I think that, and community, right? Like, we're not meant to do anything alone. And yet we live in a culture that almost exalts stoicism and like, without this individuality in a way. And yet if we look at everybody else, everybody would love to be showered upon this village mentality and supporting each other because they're more ease.
Yeah.
So, actually, my passion project right now is I'm building an online community that I probably am launching in the next month. It's called Wild Feminescence. And it's purely to build a community of women, to have conversations that are just like, let's just cut through all the BS. Like, here's what's real. Here's how good it feels to be real, speak real, claim what is really good about us, be okay with standing in what we want to transform and change and what our challenges are, and leverage our own wisdom from each other and share with each other in conversation, whether that's on Facebook, as a platform there to build community. Because when people feel supported, all of those like hardships and challenges feel doable, right? Like when we really, really sit in the pit, it's like when someone can come in and scoop you up, I got you. Amazing, right?
That breath.
And so with that community, I'm also knowing that, sometimes people don't realize that we can just like stir and get stuck in the pot, and we can hate this experience, and we can do this for like 20, 30, 40 years, right? So it's not always accessible for people to have that perspective that maybe that doesn't have to be the rest of their life. And so I'm creating monthly circles where I'll be facilitating transformational experiences that can help people have, mini, and sometimes a mini goes to a major breakthrough that can liberate that tamed part of themselves. And in that untamed self, it's like, I can reclaim the wildness in me. And this is how I express wildness. Like I can go and dance in the grocery store and like, oh, I love this song, and be free and not care if someone's looking at me, and totally love the fact that they might look at me at first and then join me. you know?
That's me. I'll be starting the dance party, aisle 3.
Me too.
Um,
Yeah.
there's that idea of also listening to someone else's story, because I think my own personal story and working with clients, people in general think that they're going through something that no one else has gone through, that they're the only ones that have gone through this or experiencing this. And the fact is, you're not the only one. And when you hear someone else saying a story, speaking their truth, and you can grab onto a piece of that and know that you're not the only one, oh man, that moment is amazing. And it pulls you into that state of being alone, right back into community. Whether you're going through something tough with someone or you're enjoying something with someone, knowing that there's people backing you or sharing that experience with you can be life-saving
Oh
for
my
someone.
gosh, completely.
And I wanted to ask another question. People who are living 20, 30 years stirring the pot in the same system, same body, how easy is it for someone to reverse that, change their hormones? How easy is that for someone? Is it a switch? Does it happen quickly, or does it take time? What are people looking at when they really want to change who they are at their core?
Oh, how to answer that question concisely? I will do my best.
I know this is a forever conversation,
Because here's
so
the thing, like
dive right in.
I'm continuously humbled and inspired by not only the human body, but the resiliency of the human spirit. So in my coaching practice, like people, in terms of timeline, you might have asked me that question years ago, and it's like, oh, it can take a while, but really what is the crux is how really ready somebody is to change. And the way that they can
Yes.
leverage that is to recognize and not ignore that in the desire to change, there's another part of them that is often equal, if not greater, that resists
Change.
right? And so if we don't understand that, and we don't need to battle with it, but we really need to understand where we keep supporting the part of us that wants to stay stuck, right? And
Yes.
what really getting to, it's like the shoulds, right? Like I think it's Tony Robbins that will just say, we can should all over the place for as long as we want, but until it becomes a must, nothing happens. And so it's like the essential part is bringing it into their embodied awareness of why it must be a must. Because once it clicks there and they have this sense of like remorse for their own participation in creating their own, whether it's a miserable experience or like chronic health issues and things like that, there's a sense of empowerment and like conviction and, oh, hell no, no more, right? And that can make transformational change happen so quickly. Literally almost like a switch. I had a session with a man the other day, and it was like, he looked different from the moment we started. Like literally, it would be like, yeah, I feel completely different. And so it's like, who knows when a person is ready. I think there is divine timing, and it can happen a long time if someone's resisting. If there's a lot of resistance to change, it can be a long path.
Yeah. Kimberly, this is your world and you love it, and you've experienced and you've changed people, clients. I want to make sure that I offer you some time to any topics that I didn't really bring forth to the table, or ideas that really, spark you and that you really wanted to make sure we talked about today.
Thanks. Gosh, anything about like freeing people and liberating them so that they can live this, what I call a soul-driven life, and be this beautifully wild, live in their essence, is my complete passion, right? So I understand the constraints of like what people call the ego and our humanity. I am in that boat too, so I know my own struggles. I do my own dance, and I think in my private practice, my naturopathic medical practice, as well as my coaching practice, I I really anchor in the healing power of love and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It's massive. And I think it's incredibly transforming. So there's nothing that like is like one specific thing. If anybody who's listening to this is interested in, kind of learning more or finding out about what this whole community is for women and wanting to do these affordable transformational experiences where they can actually have a little small time commitment so they can override the part of all the reasons why I can't afford it, I don't have the time, the classic ones that we do, where they can actually experience a shift and then create a thirst for more. It's my gift, like to want to extend that, like here, like let me help you have what you desire and what you deserve, and it doesn't have to be as hard. So the website's not live just yet, but it will be wildfeminescence.com. And there will be a Facebook community probably within the next few weeks and months. And my first circle is slotted for September 21st, which is a Monday, and it will be from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific time. And the topic will be either reclaiming the untamed self or how to understand and harness the wisdom of the body. Like what is honoring the wisdom of the body. So there'll be more information on that site too. It's just lots to juggle when there's a lot of passion in the line.
I know, so much passion. Yeah. The idea of compassion, the idea of self-compassion, meeting yourself where you are, I personally think is how you start the journey. We're rounding out with our time here, but just to hear you give a sense of how important it is to find that compassion as you start your journey.
Oh gosh. I think it not only determines whether the journey is enjoyable, but it also depends on how torturous it is. And I mean that not only in terms of how long it gets to take to get to where you want to be, but the process of how painful it is. Because without compassion, we're really staying in like a complete binary mode where something is right or wrong, good or bad. I feel this way, this emotion is good or bad. I did this one thing, I'm good or bad. And we collude and collapse both guilt and shame. And so without self-compassion, we're naturally at greater likelihood to water that garden of shame. And that is the most inflammatory thing you can have running your world and running your body, right?
Yeah. Shame stops you from moving through.
Yeah. And so if we're not having compassion, we're in like severe judgment, and we're often projecting a lot of things because we don't want to take responsibility, because doing that would mean we're wrong if we're in the shame bucket, right? And so I think it's learning to cultivate self-compassion creates lightness and humor, right? We can stop taking life so seriously. We can start owning our own humanity better. We can, we have greater access to having compassion for others. And so our relationships improve, and, we're not in a seat of judgment, and we're not flogging ourselves constantly.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yeah, did that. Hope to not do it again. Really committed to not doing it again.
Exactly.
Might.
Yeah. Open for possibilities, but continuing to work towards change, positive change, and healing.
Yeah, and committed to growth. So I'd say I'd end with like, if we're really committed to our own healing, and our own healing is growth. Because if something's not growing and evolving, it's essentially dying. Like, natural selection, right? So I like thinking it that way. Even though we want to grow, we consider growing to be painful, and at times it is, undoubtedly so. But it's also really liberating, and there's like, it's the growing pains. We're taller. There's a lot there. So
sometimes working through that, there's gonna be pain, there's gonna be hardship, it's gonna be fucking hard. But the other side of that is so amazing, beautiful, lifting. And of course, we want that for everyone listening. Anyone who needs anything that we talked about, make sure to check out the show notes. I'll definitely make sure to connect you with Kimberly. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your resources, and just talking with us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Yeah, and for everyone, you can catch this and more at greentreeayurveda.com. Thank you. See you next time.